You mentioned the phrase one more time on your podcast on Friday. Sorry, I'm grabbing ideas from your podcast, but sometimes when I hear other people's podcasts, I'm like, oh, he raced over that. That was actually a good gimmick. The Clippers are the all-time staring at whatever fucking whiteboard they have with all their names and their salaries, trying to decide whether they're going to trade Paul George or not. And they kind of look around and they go, what do you think, one more time? And everybody's like, yeah, one more time, let's go. So we're going to try to figure out how many one more time teams there are. It's the cousin of One Last Job, the action movie gimmick, where the guy's kind of out. It's like, no, one last job, man. I know the guy who runs this bank.
Oh, not the title. You mean just the overall.
The concept. Like, one last job. What could go wrong? The Clippers.
What's the movie where the cop gets diagnosed with a terminal illness and he thinks, is that Out of Time?
Oh, Denzel Washington?
No. You got to go way back for this one. I forget this guy. He's a white guy. He's around. He's kind of a That Guy award type of white guy. And I think he was the star. Maybe in one of the few movies he was a star of. And it was like a comedy, but he just went crazy because he thought it was like, I'm just about to retire. It's, you know what? I was thinking I was screwing up like whenever the cop is mentioned that he's retiring soon in the beginning of a show or a movie, he gets shot
6
within
weeks
10
left.
minutes.
Yeah. That's the lethal weapon gimmick. So we both think Clippers, this is a one more time team. I can't imagine, especially with the new stadium opening in a year, that it's like, well, if it doesn't work out this year, one more year after that. I actually thought it was very conceivable and possible that they would trade Paul George, because I don't think Kawhi has a lot of trade value and maybe try to turn him into something else. But I don't know what the market was for him, how serious the Knicks talks were, whether there's a Sacramento element that could possibly happen. But all indications seem that the Clippers are going to you could talk, if you're them and you spend enough time and maybe have enough drinks, you can go through every season and talk yourself into, well, if that hadn't happened, and talk yourself into a bad luck angle for each season. But the problem is Kawhi and Paul George have just had a ton of bad luck in their entire career. And you're betting on the two bad luck guys, which goes back to your Brogdon point. Maybe not bring Brogdon into that whole mix. So you agree that the Clippers are a one more time team?
Yeah, we should call it the Daft Punk teams. This is a no-brainer. Like if we were drafting it, which I'm actually surprising how gimmicky we can get here. We're not drafting it, but that's fine. The Clippers, I just always think about the team. I think about the guys, Lawrence Frank, the whole crew, they're going over everything and they go, okay, what are the options, gang? And you're like, well, the best options are guys are right. So fuck it. Let's just do one more year. Maybe not extend these guys, but do one more year. They've got player options that total almost $100 million between the two of them. They can figure it out. I thought the Paul George Trae Young thing was at least interesting last week, but then I started thinking about it more. I got a couple texts. It was like, that's actually, even though I think DeJounte and then Paul George are going, okay, positionally wise, maybe you've got, like, considering he's 33 with his injury history and you have to make a contract decision on something else, like it's actually whatever thing at Trae Young, that's not enough for Trae Young. It's not ewing for Trae Young, especially when you consider kind of the Zion, New Orleans, Trae Atlanta thing of how important he is to that city for that franchise. Like there's an extra bump in value, almost like the Ewing stuff would do. So when we go over these teams and being like, they can't run that back again, a lot of times I'm like, yeah, they probably will though. And I don't blame them.
Yeah, like they probably sketched out a whole, what's the best possible Knicks deal we could make conversation, right? And it's like, all right, at 2:00, we'll deep dive Obi Toppin. And they're just going through all the players. And then at some point you go, when Paul George is healthy, he's still really fucking good. Let's try it. Let's see if we can try to keep him healthy. All right, so we think the Clippers run it back. I still feel like they'll be more than willing to take somebody's longer contract for one of their 1 year and you can get rid of them guys. And maybe that's where they'll operate in. Oh, you want to get off money in 2024, 25? Well, we'll take that back because maybe they'll care a little less. I really, really, really don't want people to sleep on the whole new building part with the Clippers because they're taking a huge risk. They're building this basketball-only building that's in Inglewood where the Lakers used to be a long time ago. It's next to the football stadium. It's not really near anything, right? And they're the Clippers anyway. Nobody cares about the Clippers out here. They have their small, it's a lot like the Kings where they have their There's small, loyal group of fans. And other than that, they kind of come and go depending on how relevant they are. And I don't see them going into that first season with that arena and not having star power. So if they're looking at that from that perspective, you're better off keeping your fingers crossed with Paul George, would be my take. I also think this makes them a Zion possibility because that's a star power guy, right? Come to our new arena. We have Zion Williamson.
Maybe we might have Zion Williamson.
Yeah, we might. He might play today, or he might be in a jogging suit.
Because it's also worth at least mentioning too. Like if you were to trade Paul George, what happens with Kawhi? And I'm being sarcastic because he's a super easy dude to predict. Although maybe he is in a non-sarcastic way easy to predict because the predictable part is that you'll never know with him. But the new building thing, all those factors, much like, Trey's importance to Houston and the stuff that we've already talked about here. So you're right. Like, I don't think they're going to want to go in there saying we have the rights to Portland's pick top 6 protected in 2025. Are you interested in a luxury suite for your business?
Yeah. Would you like to sign up for our first 6 rows club? All right, let's make it a draft. You have the second pick. Who's your one more time team?
Golden State.
You got me excited when you said the word draft.
Yeah, I know. Golden State.
Oh, really?
What you think? Maybe our definition of the parameters here. I looked at it as going into this offseason being like, we're just going to run it back.
No, I had them as well. I was trying to make the draft more exciting. I do think if they trade Draymond, if they re-sign Draymond, then you could say it's one more time, but the heart of this team is Steph Curry and Draymond, and maybe we'll bring Clay back. But I think there's some one more time element with Clay. I think Clay is a really, really proud fucking dude. Not that a lot of these guys aren't, but I just don't see him. His price has been set in the 40s. He's not going to get that again, but I don't see him taking the huge pay cut. Just like I don't see Draymond taking the huge pay cut. I think all these guys feel like they were part of this dynasty. They feel like it was a dynasty. And, it's like when Kobe took that giant contract the last 2 years. It just destroyed their cap space. He's like, fuck that. I deserve it. I deserve all this money. I keep this stadium sold. This is what I deserve. And I think Clay's going to be like that. So on paper, one more time team because of the Chris Paul contract. But I still feel like the nucleus is going to be there for them.
Okay, but I also think it's important to bring up the Poole stuff because, it's a bit like the Beal thing where, yeah, I get it. That trade for Beal, like, of course, that price, are you kidding? But it wasn't a normal trade. It wasn't like other trades because he got the no trade clause. And that felt more like him going to one of 2 places. So he's not even a market. You don't even have teams bidding. I mean, that's what's so terrible about that clause.
No, they destroyed his value. I still don't know why they did that.
Yeah, no, it's funny you bring that up. Do you just go Daryl Morey, which is why I respected what he did with Simmons so much with Philly. I don't think a lot of GMs would have allowed that to go as long as it did. And Daryl wasn't going to do it until he got his price. And thank God he got his price because he turned Ben Simmons, who doesn't play, into Harden. And no matter what you think of Harden, like that's a massive win. And he got it because he was patient. He's like, hey, the offers suck. These offers suck, and I'm not going to do it. So, whatever. You don't want to play? Fine. I think other GMs would have given into that a little bit. And that's why when I think about the Beal thing, that could have been owner-driven, new front office coming in, clean slate, move on. But if that's, you have to wonder. I'm so glad you brought it up because you have to wonder at some point if you were Michael Winger, if you just go, hey, actually, no. No.
Right. I actually like the trade they got. I liked all those pick swaps. And I like Jordan Poole. I'd rather pay Jordan Poole the 30 and you get Tyus Jones. You get to potentially flip him in February. But I feel like Poole could match a lot of Beal's stats. He's not as good of a player, but production-wise, offensively, he could put together a lot of the same numbers.
Okay, but the final thing,
$20 million less.
The Poole thing, though, like having those numbers then be gone later on, unlike Beal, where the numbers continue, that's the part of the Phoenix deal where you're like, okay, are you sure? And they felt like they were so all in, and for the price that they got him, like, who cares? And they still are on the line of teams that, could this team be a contender? I think it'd be crazy to just say no about Phoenix. But With Poole, maybe his contract now being all those future numbers gone, whether it's Chris Paul after this year, not being re-signed for that kind of number, whatever they do with Wiggins, maybe they look at it as like, we can sign all these guys and whatever you think the tax calculations are for Draymond, because I have those on like different versions of what his deal is and what him leaving for nothing versus him coming back at like 90 million. The gap between that is like the tax bill is so insane, and we'll run through it a little bit later. Like maybe they go, okay, now that Poole's gone, we feel even better about extending out some of these dues, but hopefully not at the 40 and 30 million averages they're used to.
And it's okay to get crushed this year. It seems like when it gets to 2-3 years down the road, that's when you got to be a little more careful. All right, I'm going to go with my one more time team draft. I'm going to say New Orleans, but it's Zion specific. I think this has to be your last year doing the Zion dance. And I really do think that if there was a trade for him this week, it would have happened. And I just don't know if any other team felt comfortable. There's such a disparity in what New Orleans probably feels like Zion's value is versus what the rest of the league looking at it from afar probably thinks it is, that you have no chance. What was the trade going to be? It just wasn't going to happen. But I think New Orleans is like, all right, let's try to figure out how to make this go. Would it shock me if he wasn't on the team to start the season? No. But, I just always look at it from like with Tommy Shepard when he gave Bradley Beal that no trade clause. He kind of felt like I got to keep Bradley Beal here, or otherwise I'm not going to have a job in here. And as it turned out, he lost his job anyway. If you're Griffin and the Zion thing doesn't work out after another year and now he's untradeable, who gets blamed after that? It's the GM. That's how the league works.
Would you have done 3 for Zion if you were Portland?
I think I would have. I mean, Simons would have had to be in that too, right? And I would have made them take Nurkic. Yeah. I think I would have. But you and I are higher on Zion the most. But it's really tough because I love Scoot too. But I just feel like that's a better trade because now I can keep Dame versus what I'm looking at 50, 60, 70 cents on the dollar for Dame because there's no perfect trade for him. Until the Lakers decide to give Anthony Davis for him.
I don't mean to be dismissive of Simons like as if he's a throw-in because he's not.
He's not.
But then you've got CJ, Scoot,
and
it just Simons.
Gets weird. Yeah.
So, New
it would have been hard
for
them to do the contracts. You're right.
Would you
almost had to be Jeremy Grant sign and trade or something. But that's the point. There's no trade that would have made it with the contract they would have had to take back. There was no trade.
Who says no? Ingram for Simons and 3.
So I wonder if that was discussed because that was kind
discussed,
of if I'm Portland, I would have had to really think about that. I thought Ingram was the second half of last year. I was really impressed by him. He's still pretty young too, right? Isn't he like 25, 26? Is he 26?
26 in September. He's awesome. I mean,
I think I would have done that.
I think he'd be awesome with Dame. Like awesome.
Yeah, that's it. And so I lose Simons. Do I have to lose Nurkic in that too? Can I get rid of Nurkic in that trade?
No, you want to get rid of Nurkic.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Nurkic, you have to take Nurkic if I'm giving you.
I'd be like, can we have Jackson Hayes' weird ass?
Or run some screens for him?
Right. Can we get one of your bigs back? Now,
New Orleans wouldn't have done that? New Orleans wouldn't have done that.
I don't think they would have because they'd be like, wait, what if we trade Ingram and then Zion's hurt again? So, our 2 best players are both out of the mix. You could argue, okay, Ingram doesn't play enough. He's only played 70 games once in his career. That was his rookie year. Granted, a couple of those seasons were pretty close to full seasons on the shortened one. He only played 45. But when he came back this year, and he was a little slow when he came back because he missed some time. But, man, when he came back, I thought he was nasty. And I just think he'd be a perfect fit. Now, Dame, all of a sudden, like it may be an investment into Dame being like, hey, now we don't have to get Miami updates every week because he's happy that he has Ingram on the team. But I think New Orleans probably says no because they're like, well, if we get rid of Ingram and then Zion's hurt again. But back to your original point, they're a perfect example of running it back one more time. I think leading up to the draft, that's what you were hearing more and more of. Like, look, just give it one more shot. Zion's young enough. They still have him under contractual control. If the offers aren't good enough, I don't know how different the market would be if he also misses even more time this year, because I imagine it'd probably still be a little similar to what they were being offered that they probably didn't like leading up. So I don't have a problem with it because he's a star in a city that's not going to get a star.
You have the next pick. So far, we took the Clippers, Golden State, and New Orleans in the one last job draft.
I'm going to zag a bit because I think they're just going to run it back and no one's going to be excited about it. I think Chicago is going to be a pretty similar team.
Oh. I might have been on the trade machine this weekend trying to figure out a Brogdon, Caruso, Celtics take back Lonzo, and just how those salaries could work. And then all of a sudden I brought Charlotte into it and Gordon Hayward was involved and Lonzo was going to Charlotte. And I was just basically trying to figure out how to get the Celtics Caruso in a realistic way, and I couldn't pull it off. But
you know what the Ringer should
looks
do?
Like Lonzo's out for the year, and he has some injury exception, right? So they can use half of his money on somebody else.
They will, right?
I think Chicago brings back Vucevic. I don't think Zach really has a market with the 4 playoff games in 9 years. I don't think there's a line outside the Zach door right now. And then DeRozan is on a good contract, and maybe you look to trade him December, January range. And now you're like, so what is your training camp like where you're like trying to get the fans excited? You're like, Patrick Williams, you should see him go to his left now. Worked on it all summer. Like, what are your moves? We were so close to beating Miami in that playing game. People forget. Like, we were right there. How do you get your fans fired up?
Yeah, because blowing it up, I actually feel bad for Chicago. They were right about the DeRozan thing when it felt like all of us were wrong. I was wrong. I'm like, how much? How? Like, what? And then he takes
the Vooch trade was bad. The Vooch trade was irresponsible.
Right, but they thought, like, I don't know.
That trade was ridiculous.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, I'm admitting one of my flaws in that sometimes
you just feel bad. Like, sympathy?
No. I don't think it's sympathy. It's just that we were so conditioned to think that every move like had to be, does that make, like, I just hate talk radio shit where like the trade happens and it's like, does that guarantee you a title? You're like, no, dickhead, it doesn't.
Yeah.
You win.
Maybe.
Okay.
How about the 5 seed? Is that good? Is the 5 seed good for you?
Like, you win the argument, man. Let's take some calls. Or any move that's not tanking if you're not in that. Like, I'll just never forget like being on the set once with Bob Ryan where the Celtics made some minor move. And then I think Felger may have said like, yeah, but is this like championship driven? And Bob Ryan's like, who cares? This team isn't that good. Just being better would be nice. Right. and it made an impression on me.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll look at these teams and just go, hey, we're just trying to get better. We're trying to compete. And I think that's what Chicago did. And then everybody got better around them. The East got way better real quickly. The Vooch rule should be, does this guarantee you like moving on a couple rounds of playoffs? No, it doesn't. The price looks even worse after the fact. But I get what they were trying to do. No, it looks
better after they took Jett Howard. I think the price is actually now better. So you lay out all that the trade on paper. It's like, they basically traded Franz and Carter for Vooch. I could talk myself into that.
I'm trying to think of like the last time, but then it wasn't that long ago. I think Johnny Davis was the most recent. Everybody's like, man, I don't know if I see it. Actually, people probably like Johnny Davis more when he was drafted than they did.
Well, it was weird because he had a teammate that everybody seemed to think was better than him. That was also a weird dynamic.
Oh, and Buffkin?
Kobe.
Yeah.
All right, so you took Chicago. The Celtics are still on the board, and I'm going to take them from a one more time with the Jalen contract, which he's going to get, but they won't be able to trade until next July. And it's in the air. I sent you the FanDuel odds, and the Celtics are the favorites to win the title on FanDuel at plus 460, and Denver is plus 470. I just thought that was outrageous, and I get it. Maybe the East is worse than the West. But Denver, to me, is the most repeatable champ we've had since the 2017 Warriors. The style of play, the age of the guys, and the fact that they're going to be able to so easily add around on the fringes with rotations and all the guys who would want to play on that team. How are they not the favorites? I don't understand it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I don't get it. I mean, Bruce Brown's a nice piece, but I mean, that's the thing is as soon as you go in there, you're going to be a better player because of Jokic. You just are.
And maybe Christian Brown will play a lot of those Bruce Brown minutes and actually be pretty good. Yeah, I really like Bruce Brown. I valued what he did, but Christian Brown might be ready to do more for that team too. So anyway, with the Celtics, they're somehow the favorites, even though they've only made one finals. The Porzingis thing, Zach was saying how the thing that made him nervous about the trade was they were already not a good passing team, and they moved their best passer. Whether you would call Smart a great passer, I don't know, that's debatable, but he at least would look for other guys. And Porzingis is another I need the ball guy. And he was just worried about just that piece of it. I'm still so bullish on Derek White from what we saw last year, being able to step up and have stuff run through him, that I'm not as worried about it. But, there's a world where this Celtics season goes sideways, as weird as that sounds, because they're prohibitive favorites in the East, right? You got Rob and you have Porzingis, not exactly Lou Gehrig and AC Green from a durability standpoint. You have all of a sudden it's gonna be like Peyton Pritchard. It's time. It's hey, Brogdon might be ready for the start of the season. Like there's some little stuff, and then giving Jalen all that money, which they're gonna do. What does that mean? Is he gonna want to be there? So
he's gonna want to be
the
there.
The Mazzulla piece,
right? I mean that's the year. Some of the restrictions that we've been talking about too, like they're not going to take place this season anyway. So. Okay, as disappointing as the Philly series was, because they should have beaten them. They shouldn't have been down 3-2 to that team, and then even worse, the Miami team. To lose those series, whether it's the finals last year, the Eastern Conference Finals this year, like you go into it being like, hey, that's still a really good team. I'm with you. I wouldn't make them the favorites over Denver, but I think the statistical models have had a hard-on for Boston now for 2 years. Yeah, I think Wick Grossbeck, I remember listening to him in a preview of this upcoming past season where he went on NBA radio and he said, hey, we were a little overrated. And the host didn't understand what he meant. And what he meant was that I think 538 gave the Celtics like an 87% chance of winning the NBA Finals against Golden State. And, when you're watching all season long, not to knock everybody's models, because those of us that watch get it wrong, ignoring models or looking at them. But it's like, man, if you're 87% based on your model, those two teams last year, then something's wrong with the model. And that's what Wick was talking about. Wick was looking at it going like, we had all of these different projections at times that we were this overwhelming favorite. So the fact that most of those guys are still around, I don't know if Vegas is looking at that and factoring in what the price is, but the models love Boston. And it's not going to be any different for a third year of this with the depth and the guys. Although the defense clearly has fallen off from what they were 2 years ago, I wouldn't have them be the favorites. I think the only thing that you would say for Denver, which I think is totally fair, and I've said it already way too many times, is the regular season profile was not of the team that you think of like Golden State. Like you can say they're the most dominant since. Maybe we're in the very beginning of this. Maybe this is their 14 or 15 year. 14 wasn't a title year for Golden State. 15 felt like they were ahead of schedule. Denver doesn't feel like they're ahead of schedule.
Can I go way back with the 77 Blazers and then the next year started 50-10 in the title? They were actually better the next year. I think that's going to be Denver. I really do.
So you think they're going to go like 65 wins next year? Better
I think
defense.
They're going to be awesome. Yeah, I do. I really do. I sometimes the title, the disease of more can happen, or you could be like, man, we got lucky and then we lost this role guy and that guy. I just think they're top four unless Porter got hurt or there's some sort of injury variable that we don't know about yet. Just their style of play and how good Jokic is. I think Jokic is that good. And the history of the league says that was the start of something, not the culmination of something.
He is that good.
Somebody who's that good.
Yeah, no, he's that good, and I'm glad it's happened. He feels Tim Duncan-ish, where it's like, well, if your number one guy is wired that way and all this shit's real, then you have a better chance of staying the course as a franchise because it's only so many
he
players.
Couldn't wait to leave America. It's like, is there a parade? All right, I'll stay. I guess I'll stay for that before I can get out of here. Like to him, it's like, let's go, let's kick everyone's ass, we'll win the title, and I'll get out of there. And then he'll come back next year and he'll kick everyone's ass again.
Well, you see what's going on with our country politically. Can you blame him? Wait, real quick though, like teams? You're a little too dismissive of it though. When I'm talking about Denver and who they were this regular season and how weird the rest of the West was, I think that's part of the pricing there that Vegas is coming up with. I think they agree with me more than you do.
3 maybe teams, and then we'll wrap this up. Lakers, Philly, and Milwaukee. Because the Lakers, the one more time thing would be just if LeBron, this is the last year of his deal, and if his son is good enough to come right out of college and get drafted the first year, I think LeBron's just going to go to whatever team that is. The Philly piece, Harris, who the Harris trade coverage stuff this week was pretty hilarious, but it looks like they're going to have Harden back. I'm operating under that assumption. And if nothing happens with that team this year, then something will happen. And then, I don't know, Milwaukee, it seems like Lopez is leaving. I know we're going to do that next segment with the players, but it just seems like other teams have more money than the Bucks do for this. And,
Windhorst was on that. Windhorst was, when he talked about Middleton opting out, he was on TV this week. And now all of us are like, as soon as Windhorst leans a certain way, we're like, what does he know? What does he know? And he was, I think it would make sense to any of us to pay attention to this stuff. The listeners that are super up on this deal, Middleton opting out may mean nothing. Brook Lopez, he was like, that might be a little trickier.
Well, here's the problem. Brook Lopez won a ring already. That's the part we always forget with some of these guys. When they have the ring, it's just a different mindset. It's like, I already did it. I already won the title. Now let me get one last awesome contract and get used in the right team, right situation. So